right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Watch Well podcast. This was not my idea. This was my stand-in producer Tyson's idea. He actually found a group of guys that he wanted to talk to, bring on the podcast. So if you guys could just introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about why you're here. BeRegenerated, BeRegenerated, right?
Yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that, and then where people can find you.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Tate Taylor. I am one of the co-founders and owners of a company called BeRegenerated. We're here at the Fight Laugh Feast conference. We have a booth set up. We have a podcast as well, the BeRegenerated podcast. You can find us there. You can also find us. I'm on Twitter at Brimstone Tactic, or you can just search Tate Taylor. There's not a ton of Tates out there. And then you can also find us on Instagram at BeRegenerated, and my Instagram handle is Tate Taylor as well. So
awesome. Caleb?
Yeah, I'm Caleb Howard. I've been a part of BeRegenerated since the beginning, which is like about what?
Yeah,
April?
about 7 months now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Very, very fruitful.
We met each other at Joel Wevin's conference, Right Response Ministries, this summer? It was just earlier this year.
It was this spring.
Yeah. It seems like a really long time ago.
Dude,
I moved
real.
across the country since then, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was that conference?
It was excellent. Yeah, great speakers. Dr. Joe Boot was there, Pastor Doug Wilson, some of the guys from Ogden.
Yeah.
It was great. Dusty Devers.
Yeah, so cool. So tell me a little bit more about BeRegenerated, why someone would be interested.
Yeah, so we do fitness and nutrition from a biblical perspective.
Okay.
So working on some of these things that we're doing in the theological areas, as far as like theological maximalism, pushing all of this stuff into the corners, applying all of Christ for all of life, but we're doing that in the physical side as well. And so I think if there is a critique that you could pretty easily give to the Reformed community, the physical side of things tends not to be taken very seriously, unless we're talking about, wine and communion or feasting or something along those lines. Like, we're good at that part.
Yeah.
But I think there's a desire, and a good desire that men have for physical excellence. And so we're kind of targeting those things, giving guys the tools and the resources they need to start working on some of that, and understanding that there's a negative side to this as well, and that gluttony and sloth are sins that are mentioned in the Bible.
Right.
And for whatever reason, we as a community tend to brush over those, and those words don't hit us really hard, like sexual immorality.
Right.
Or pornography or abortion.
Yeah.
Some of these other issues, which are absolutely very serious. And I'm not degrading those things, but for whatever reason, we tend not to lend the same amount of weight to these other sins that are named in Scripture.
Right.
And told, like, stay away from this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do not abide here.
Right.
And so really kind of like narrowing down on that side of things, and hopefully we can get the level of fitness and health in this room to tick up a few notches.
Yeah.
So something as I was talking with you both was impacted. You mentioned the Tombstone poster, and you both really were like, "Yeah, let's talk about Tombstone." But it triggered in my head, like, those guys were operators, and that word has been kind of in my head for about 6 to 8 months now. The term operator, and when you come to be a guy, to be a man, and I've had physical fitness in my life for about 10 years. But then, like, even the next level, like, you watch a movie like Tombstone, and you see those guys, like, shoot the tin can, and they're like, ping, 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 and it's knocked right off, and then they're killing guys, but they're accurate, and they're operable, and they're like a Wyatt Earp, he just takes out guys, right?
Yeah.
And so to, like, the level of training, the level of the ability to have what's not shown in a movie is the background of how they got to that level. Yeah, this is your starring moment, but, like, how many years did it take you to get there?
Yeah.
And that's really hidden, and it's the discipline that you do as a guy to be able to be that guy in the movie that you see, to be that
Hero.
that star, that hero. What does it take to get there?
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite topics, actually. I think this is an area of Disneyfication that we don't really pay attention to, is the fact that the hero is some orphan boy that someone finds in a forest, and then, like, the next day he's King Arthur.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not how that works.
Or it's not of his own ability.
It just happens
to
to
become
him.
that. It's like almost like like a magic kind of thing. Like he walks through a
it's
thing and
like
he's
some
a chosen one.
yeah, like Captain America.
He was the only
he
one that
goes through
could.
and he has all the science done to him and he comes out this big jack dude.
Yeah.
He didn't really do anything to become Captain America. He had the virtue and he had everything, but he was still this scrawny little guy.
Yeah, you got put in this tube, and then we injected you with this stuff, and 5 minutes later, you were the baddest man on the planet.
Right.
That's not how that works.
No.
Then if you shift to something like The Incredibles, where where Mr. Incredible, he gets super fat and he's not a good dad, and then you have the training montage.
Yeah.
Where he's lifting trains and he's getting in shape and he's putting in the work to become what he used to be.
But also, like, they at least include the training montage. They do this with Batman too.
Right.
In Batman Begins, where like the training montage lasts like at most it lasts 3 minutes.
Yeah.
In real life, it lasts 3 years.
Right.
And we don't like that as much. We're like,
because it's hard.
One of my favorite.
I don't know. I get a 3 minute montage.
Right.
One of my favorite training montages is Rocky IV.
Yeah.
Where they're vice versa
right.
the
Russian.
the
and-
Russian,
yeah.
and Rocky, and just you see that difference, and then you get into like the drugs and
Yep,
stuff
that's
too,
right.
and the
I was just
performance
gonna say
enhancing things, like so. But that's just a great montage of training that really inspires somebody, but it's still hard work. You gotta have that discipline.
Yeah, and just to let everyone know, like at 4:30 in the morning when you wake up and it's time to go to the gym and it's 14 degrees outside, they don't have that music playing in like across the sky in the background.
Right.
If only.
Like it's quiet and lonely.
Yep.
And it kind of sucks.
Yep.
And I think it's something that we have to learn how to start being attracted to that level of suck.
Yeah.
Like that level of difficulty needs to elicit the same response for us that the Rocky montage does, where we look at that and go, that's where I'm supposed to be. Like in those difficult situations is where I'm called to stand in a gap. Like that's a gap I'm supposed to fill right there. I absolutely agree with all of that. And I think Tombstone is one of those movies too where this is
They were men.
they were
Real
men.
men.
Yeah.
And like that didn't come about, like we have already talked about, through some sort of like just like magical scenario.
They didn't wake up the next day and go,
no.
yeah, I'm just going to take out all these guys with my pistol.
Life
A lot of what they learned was probably from their fathers.
life in the Wild West was insanely
Yeah.
difficult.
It was
It was
very-
crazy.
It was very skill based. You had to know how to live, to survive.
Yeah.
And like I said, that probably came from their fathers.
Yeah. Absolutely. And life experience. Just like like I'm going to venture out here and figure this out.
Right.
And I think one of the things about that movie that it always strikes me is the coolness that those guys have under insane duress.
Yeah.
Like skin that smoke wagon and
Yeah,
see what happens.
Yeah.
Like that line where you're like, the guy actually has a gun.
Yeah.
He could shoot him.
Yeah.
And he's like, come on.
Let's
see.
do it. Let's
see.
do it. What are you
And
gonna do? Stand there and
like,
bleed?
And like the other dude is panicking.
Yeah.
Because he can see that there's no fear in his eyes.
Right.
And he's like, oh no.
Right.
This is not good for me.
Right.
I think you take that into the Christian's perspective too. Like, you watch a movie like Tombstone, it feels like they can lay down their life, right? They value their life, but they're willing to die for their life, for whatever,
cause, whatever.
Cause,
Yeah.
whatever, like
For their friends.
yeah. And so it really plays out in real life. Like, man, you look up to that, and it's that biblical, like something in your heart that just like, oh man, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
And it's that same piece of like,
Well, it would be the rejection of fear of man.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the fear of death. Like
Yeah.
it would be that, like, I know where I'm going to be one day in heaven. Like
Right.
I'm going to be with my maker, and if I'm called to do this, like, let's go.
And that's
just
a good
no
yeah,
fear.
That's absolutely a good point, because in that same thought process, to take that to its logical conclusion, the Christian is the only one in their worldview that could support not being afraid of death.
Yes.
So the people who aren't Christians, they're not saved, so they're not going to paradise. They're not going to go to heaven, right? Why would the Christian cower when those guys are willing to die?
Right.
When they don't have their salvation? But the Christian has salvation. He knows where he's going. His hope is in things not of this world. But we're too afraid to die to stand up for the cause.
Right. It's
doesn't
not a
make
true
sense.
conviction at that point.
Right. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's super important. So I wanted to ask another question. So I think it's kind of right up the alleyway here. recently, like, I guess not so recently, but right now it's kind of, on social media, you have this whole red pill movement. And I don't mean our lovely friends down here at Reformation Red Pill, but just the broader red pill movement where it's hyper masculinity. Why would guys, in your guys' opinion, with what you guys do with Be Regenerated, why would you recommend what you do over trying to go the red pill route?
I think this comes into like what's the time horizon, because what we're talking about a lot of the time is delayed gratification. Do you want the gratification of working hard, or do you want to deal with the difficulty that will come later when you don't?
Right.
Like health is not, like a lack of health is not easy.
No, it's not.
It's miserable.
Yeah, you're kind of so. There's a quote: "Choose your hard."
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And choose the difficulty.
And I will say this, like, so this is my first time being here on the mic and stuff, so I can give you my little bit opinion of what I've seen here so far in this podcast. And probably 90% of the guys that you're referring, or 10% of the guys that you're referring to, that hyper masculinity, may be in this room. I feel like the 90% need what you guys offer.
I would say that. Yeah, absolutely would say that. Maybe it's probably even. It might even be less than that.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. You're probably right, though, for sure.
But to kind of get to that, like, delayed gratification thing, there are levels to it. And so there's the level of, like, an Andrew Tate who has enough discipline to stay in shape, has enough discipline to make money, even if it's in terribly immoral ways.
Yeah.
He has this ability to delay gratification a little bit. But the thought of him devoting himself to a single woman and covenanting with her and then bearing children and thinking about how to benefit his generations for eons to come is way outside of his scope.
Yeah, he's right. It's all pride. It's no humility. It's no servant leadership.
Right.
Yeah.
And I understand that, like that sacrificial leadership. I understand the servant leadership term's been kind of like co-opted, but I think there's something to this where there's an aspect that's like great men plant trees that they know that they'll never sit in the shade of.
That's right. Yeah.
Like that thing. Yeah. And so that is happening not just in that scenario where you're like, oh, he's talking about planting trees. No, it's like you might be doing something as simple as going for a run in the mornings, or, doing a set of push-ups before you get in the shower at night, that is going to genuinely benefit people that you may never meet.
Right. Because
it genuinely does affect the way that your legacy is played out. The physical thing about this way, to have a man as a grandfather that is a mythic figure, that is capable of incredible things and was the star athlete when he was younger, has always been the man that everyone looks up to. And I have a grandfather like this. Well, you don't, like, as I never saw those things. I wasn't there. But I want to live up to that legacy.
Yeah.
I want to meet that standard.
Yeah.
And I don't want to let him down.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's something to that. Like, it doesn't die. Your effort doesn't die. Like, to go to more gladiator, like, movie quotes, like your
what we do in
actions,
life echoes in eternity.
It echoes into eternity.
Right.
I tweeted this the other day. It doesn't just echo through eternity. It echoes down through your generations of the people that you impact in this life. The way that they will live and think and speak forever is going to be altered by how you live today.
Yeah, I mean, even more directly, like, maybe, I don't know, 25, 30 years from now, when my kids are grown and married, and someone says, "Why do you do jiu-jitsu?" Well, it's because my dad did jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's just practically.
Why do you work on cars? My dad liked cars.
You mentioned your grandfather. I have a grandfather, so he passed away about 10 years ago, but he was 92. My family has a family farm of 120 years in our family. Wow. My grandfather farmed about 500 acres in northwest Ohio. He every day would, my grandmother would bake him 2 eggs and toast, and they would pray, and we read the daily word together. And they would go out on the farm, bust his butt, in the gloom, in the dark, in the cold, raising hogs. My dad now takes that ownership of that farm, and then I hope to do that one day. But it's that heritage. It's the discipline that starts at a man going, I have to do this, while no one's watching, but that sets up generations to come.
That's right.
And I think we always think no one's watching, but I don't think that's really ever the case. For sure, the Lord is aware of your effort.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely.
But also, you know that he was doing that.
Oh, yeah,
Like, you're very aware of it, even if you weren't there for it.
right.
Even if you weren't with him, waking up and going out into the dark before the sunrise to feed animals and take care of farm equipment, all of those things, you know it.
Yep.
You're carrying it with you now.
Absolutely.
It's not dead. His actions didn't die. Like, the way that he lived is living on.
Right.
And so I think that we have to understand that.
That's
we have to understand that the way that we live and speak, the way that we carry ourselves now will be emulated by our descendants. Like,
Yeah.
your son is going to want to be you.
Generationally.
Should he want to be you?
Right. Yeah.
Or is this going to be a situation where he's going, I got to not be like that guy.
right.
I got to be the opposite of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Obviously, like, we've talked about that part of it, but I mean, even to really practical levels, like, it's just a lot more fun to be strong.
Yeah.
You had made a comment yesterday about how someone that would need help setting up a table, they're going to go straight to the guy that looks strong, that is capable of doing that thing. And so it's just something in the back of our minds that everyone notices, oh, hey, I have this need. I'm going to go to the guy that appears more capable of getting that done. It's just something inside of us, like, oh, we're drawn to that.
So I had
We
that
see it.
experience earlier this spring in my church. So my wife serves in the nursery at 9 o'clock. They came to me and said, I went to them and said, hey, I'm available. What do you need from me? Oh, you need security. Well, they kind of, observed my body shape and thought that I could do security, right? Well, little they know, really, I didn't really own a handgun or an AR-15 or anything like that, right? But what does that do? All of a sudden, like, I get into a situation where a homeless guy comes into our church and, like, I've got to deal with it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing in this. So, like, it spurs me into, like, okay, I better start jiu-jitsu. Hey, I might want to start understanding how a Glock, 19 works. And, and then, hey, this is kind of fun. Like, let's go get an AR. Like, let's, and you start to, like I said, the word operators come to my mind. And I just want to get better in that training and discipline in that regard. I don't know what the Lord has for me in the future, but he's putting something on my heart to get prepared for something. I'm going to do it.
And you would much rather be ready
Yeah.
and never need it
Yeah.
than for the difficulty to show up and then you not know what to do.
Yeah.
And I to that, like, the operator scenario, this is something I think the guys in this camp are becoming increasingly concerned with, and I think they should. The world is in utter turmoil.
Yeah.
We don't have any idea what the next 6 months is going to look like. We don't have any idea what the next week is going to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, things are about to get
Hairy.
pretty interesting.
Yes.
Right.
You would much rather be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's, because from a grand scale, there's only so much you can do about what happens in D.C.
Sure.
Like, you only have so much. Like, I'm not going to change that.
Yeah.
But I can make sure that my household's prepared. I can make sure that that my community and my church is a lot more ready to go. And not because I necessarily want to have to go use that, but because it might be needed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna fall on my shoulders. It's gonna be my responsibility if it shows up and knocks on my door.
Mm-hmm. Tying this back to kind of the movie theme, while we were driving 17 hours down here straight through the night, one of the movies that we watched was Cold War. And I was kind
Civil War.
I'm sorry, Civil War.
Civil
Thank
War,
you for
yeah,
checking
yeah.
me. Civil War.
Yeah.
So new movie comes out. I was kind of curious about how they're going to play the whole, like, dystopian type of thing. And we watch it, and it sucked. It sucked bad.
It was so
It was
bad.
so bad.
It was
But-
bad. It was
I
bad tape.
haven't seen it.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't
You're
worry.
fine.
Fine.
don't.
You're fine.
But
It's
to your
terrible.
point about, like, you made a comment along the lines of, are you ready or not? And it played off this, like, this country where some of the country was at war, and then some of the country was, like, head in the sand, not knowing what's going on, didn't really care, live on the farms and going, I'm going to deal with my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, all of a sudden, like, when people come with guns, then they're like, oh, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And so, like, don't watch the movie. It's terrible. But that theme.
Now you're
going
gonna
want
to watch the movie to see how bad it is.
Yeah.
It's like this. It's like these two reporters with cameras, and they're gonna save the world.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's so bad.
Really bad.
It's as bad as it sounds.
They lost me at California and Texas are teaming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Yeah.
I want to say, as a student, really, what comes to my mind is the scripture that talks about a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. And I think that can go towards like inhibiting certain habits or very destructive things, but also cultivating that and having it rightly ordered to like a good godly motivation to steer that around and having good disciplines for the glory of God.
Right.
And one thing that is very different about these guys versus your typical Twitter manosphere, like work out, like get all the women you want, make $1 million in your first year kind of thing, is that it's rightly ordered. It's all for the kingdom of Christ. And
Amen.
Stay strong for yourself, because we're men, we're the protectors, the providers of our household.
Right.
So we got to be strong, but also for your family and the community, whether that's the church or just your neighborhood. Whenever action calls, and someday, hopefully it won't call, but I mean we're in a fallen world. It will call somehow, some way. So be disciplined, be ready to act as a man for the glory of God at the time that it's being called for.
Discipline. I mean, that's the big word here. I think you got to be disciplined. Like, we talked a little bit. Like, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I start with a half hour in the Word. I start next to a half hour with a half hour of prayer, and then by 6 a.m. I'm in my CrossFit class, and then I'm at 8 o'clock at my work. Right.
Yeah.
That's my schedule on point every day.
Yeah.
And it's just a form of discipline that if I don't do that, I am not the man God called me to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're definitely not. You have this potential there, and are you getting all of the juice that you can out of the grape? Like, are you getting every bit out of this that you can?
Yeah.
And men are made to be bearers of burdens. Like, you're made to carry things for people.
Sure.
Like, pick up your cross and carry it and follow me. We've just over spiritualized that to death. But like, I sometimes am like, most of the people in here can't pick up a piece of lump. Like, you wouldn't be able to pick it up. You would just sit there and stare at it. Like,
right.
And I get that that's not a physical analogy. I understand, but like there's a picture being drawn. We can't relate to the picture. Are you going to be able to relate to what's being translated by the picture?
Right.
If you can't relate to the symbol, is it going to be effective? And so, like Paul saying, run the race with endurance. Yeah. Well, if you ever done anything like that? Like,
well, I think
Joseph of Arimathea, who picks up Jesus' cross, probably was selected out of the crowd. Probably not because he was like a beanpole. He was probably a pretty BA guy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, carry
Like,
Jesus' cross.
he looks like he could carry it.
Yeah, right. Make him do it, and then he gets in the Bible. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he literally carries
really funny.
Jesus' cross for him, right?
I forget what I was gonna say. It's all good. It's gone.
It's all
gone.
good.
I've stolen his words from him. The first time I'm in his seat, and I take his words from him.
No, I
feel
remember.
really good
I remember. I was going to talk about your point about, it's a spiritual reference, but I don't think that it's lost on the fact that, it's kind of like when you've never felt pain before, and then you feel something, and you're like, oh, that's as much as I can take.
Yeah.
And then you feel a little bit more, and you're like, well, that's not as this is worse than before. And you keep pushing that threshold further and further and further, physically, obviously within reason. We're not talking about like torture, like or whatever.
You don't need to be a
that,
masochist, right?
Like, I'm just kind of articulating that to create the point that when you get used to physical pain, you can tend to take more.
Absolutely.
Because your threshold is further, no differently than in the spiritual sense. If you're suffering for Christ, you can take more as you suffer, and it's just working it like a muscle, right?
Absolutely.
You have, hypertrophy training and all these things. You actually have to tear it down so that it can rebuild back stronger.
Yeah.
And that's going to cause pain.
Yeah, there's going to be soreness.
Things have to be stretched, and
it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
Right.
For sure. I think what you're doing is you're developing a greater perspective.
Yeah.
And you think that you know everything that you could know because you know this much. And then someone goes,
There's
and
that.
you're like, oh, well, that changes my view of that other thing.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's also seen when you're talking business with somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all of this work, but then they're doing this much work.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I need to level up.
Yeah.
And then you grow.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Then it becomes normal. It
Yep.
becomes the routine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you find somebody else who's like, well, I'm doing 90 hours a week or whatever it is, just some stupid number. And then it's like, oh, okay, well now I got. And then you go from there.
This is when I think one of the major advantages of what we're doing with our online group, and Caleb's a part of it, but a lot of guys think that they're sort of at their wit's end, and they're like, I'm at the end of my rope, man. Like I can't add any more here. And then they get into the group, and they talk to some guy who's doing twice as much as they are, and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess I could probably work in a 15-minute workout before I get in the shower at night. And there's something painful about that, but it's also like
right.
after the fact, you're like, man, I'm really glad that I didn't stay where I was.
Oh, every time. Every time I'm a prime example of having to have that push from guys like Tate. Like, I mean, look at us. He's freaking jacked over here. But there's guys all throughout the group that are older and wiser and have put in the work and see me and are, one, humble enough to say, hey, I will take you under my wing. I will give you like this advice and encourage you in this way because I know that you can do it because I did it. And so having that encouragement of one, seeing these guys that have done it before, but also actively encourage me to do that same thing, it is a huge, huge thing to someone like me to say, okay, I got to put the rubber on the road. I can do this, and so I will do this.
Yeah. I think, to me, like, I always get the mindset of, like, planting your foot in the ground and going. So, like, in Jesus' time, when he says, I faced Jerusalem, he knew where he was going. He planted his foot in the ground, and he went. And that's always, to me, like, when I get up at 4:30, it's like I'm planting my foot in the ground, like, stepping there.
Yeah.
And it's that first step that is the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get the ball rolling, you're like, okay, like, my CrossFit gym has a phrase that says, just show up. That's what they have their mantra on. Just show up.
Sounds like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, because like the first step is the hardest. You got to plant your foot in the ground and go. As soon as you do that, then the rest becomes easier.
The book of Ezekiel.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, the book of Ezekiel. Numerous times, God says to Ezekiel, He says, "Son of man, set your face."
Yeah.
And He just says it to him over and over. Every time He's going to talk to him, He goes, "Set your face, Son of man, set your face." And it's this idea of resolve. Beowulf talks about this right before he goes to fight the dragon. And he basically is like, my face is set. I am resolved. And like, you can all abandon me, and I'm still going in there. And that's another thing that I think everyone assumes it's like this intangible that you're either born with or you don't have it. And I'm not saying some people are more gifted than others. So.
Yeah, it's just like genetics. You have
Absolutely.
certain things that you are gifted with, but it doesn't mean that you can't develop what you have. That's your point.
I absolutely, like, I think way more of the things that we assume are just, a yes or a no are actually skills that could be developed. It's something that you could work on.
When you walk by and somebody says, "Oh man, your biceps are really big," it's like you didn't gain those from like sleeping overnight and waking up like we talked before. It's like this takes a lot of work to get there.
Well, and the other thing too is like that perspective continues. Like you don't ever stop having that perspective.
Yeah.
I immediately think of someone who's bigger than me.
Sure, absolutely.
Like it doesning go away. Like there's always a bigger fish,
Yep,
right? Like
yep.
there's always more that you could be doing. And I'm not degrading. Like some people are genuinely really impressive, and they're owed some due for sure. But like,
but that's significant, right? Because what people that aren't doing it are still noticing that takes time just by calling it out, just by saying, "Man, you look good.
Mm-hmm.
You look strong." They're inherently that's acknowledging the work.
yes,
And it might be subliminal, but they know that what they're doing or why they don't do it.
Another piece to that
you know
is
what I'm
like
saying?
when they recognize that, they also recognize sometimes, like, that people will ask me, like, how did you get this way? I said, well, it takes time and discipline. Like, and it actually opens up the door to share about your life, right? And about what God has done for you. Like, it's a testimony. People, when they see your physical appearance, people are impressed and then wants to ask questions, and it starts this whole conversation down the road. So you can use it for God's glory.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't know why we, not to be like seeker sensitive, we were talking about this with someone else earlier, but like aesthetics matter.
Yeah.
Like you are a walking billboard. Like, does it look good? I don't know. Like, why you don't find like the worst stuff that you could possibly think of and then set it up behind us here for people to look at on the podcast.
Yeah.
You're trying to be visually appealing. Well, one way to make sure all of your clothing like is more stylish is to be in good shape.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
You don't have to have good style if you like if all of your clothes fit you better.
Right.
And we try not to be judgmental, right? I try not to judge others, but there is sometimes when I see somebody that maybe is 400, 500 pounds, you're like, they don't have their life together. And it's terrible to say, but it does come on.
It communicates something.
Yeah.
Everything communicates to some level, and we can't help but to see that and compute it and make some kind of conclusion.
Yeah, the point is not to try to like spit on that person or
Right.
look down
Sure,
on them
sure.
or cast some sort of.
It's more of like a
intention
sadness.
on-
It's like, why aren't they owning this so that they can be better?
Right, and it's also but also like you to act like it's not recognizable is to lie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
I mean,
sure.
you can make some strong inferences based off of the way someone looks and carries themselves.
That's right.
If someone walks up and is really obviously fit, you could make some strong assumptions about the way they live.
Yeah,
The same goes for the opposite.
right.
That's to act like that's not true is to just act like the law of reaping and sowing is not true. And
Right.
like God's not mocked. If you live a certain way, you will reap the benefits of it or
Right.
you'll reap the curse of it.
Right.
It's just the way the world works.
Yeah. And you got to be careful with that too, because you don't know you don't know where they've come from either.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
like that's tough because I think the majority of the time you're probably correct where you could make that snapshot, but there may be that one person that was even heavier and then they lost weight or
Yeah.
something. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
There's everybody's got
There's
a
always,
journey.
there's always an outlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like if somebody's on that journey, man, like I would love to partner with them,
Absolutely.
come around them,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
cheer them on,
Yeah,
spur them on.
brotherhood. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The point is
But
not
that's
to
the
like
whole point of the Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
slap everybody
Yeah.
and go, "What do you do?" Like
Yeah.
maybe there's a handful of guys that need that, but like for the most part, it's for encouragement because what most guys do is they're like, well, I can only do X. And you're like, that's enough for now. Like do X until X is not a big deal.
Yeah.
I can only go for a 10-minute walk after meals. Great. Do that until that's not a big deal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then like everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the encouragement is a good piece to hone in on too, because ultimately, when it's super interesting. I guess if we could intellectualize this a little bit, where a guy, we all struggle with pride. It's common with men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to get in shape is to stop self-deceiving yourself, which takes humility,
Yeah.
and that's the first step to start.
Yeah.
And that's why the encouragement's so good, because we're always comparing ourselves to other men where it's like,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't want to, I got to hold a particular status. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but, you're constantly, I don't want to let my guard down,
Yeah.
And then when you have a Discord like what you guys offer, it's very inviting. And it's like, hey, you're not going to,
Yeah.
we need to get you from A to B. That's the goal, and we're here to help.
Yeah, I think so. We do a consistency tracker, and it's a weekly thing that's posted. And a lot of the time, when guys first get in, the percentage is not good.
Yeah.
And it's like the thing though,
But they're there.
but as they show up, the thing though is that you usually can tell pretty quickly if someone's gonna do well, and things are gonna change if they just post it anyways. And they're like, I did it was like 45% this week, guys. Like it was really bad. And you're like, that's okay, dude. Like now that we've addressed this and you can see it and you're aware of it, now we can improve.
Yeah, there's a baseline. Okay, next month or however the tracker works, 46% is the goal.
But it takes a lot of humility to do that.
Yeah.
And I think when I say us, I mean like the company. as a group, and a bunch of the stuff that I post on social media is often looked at as from other Christians. I get a lot of flack for it's basically just like vainglory.
Oh yeah.
And like, you've never seen me post some sort of like shirtless anything
Ripped
Yeah,
off.
like
I got you.
I there's
Thirst
no
trap.
immodesty. There's nothing like that. And
But Tate, physical wellness is only of some value. Why don't you know this?
but it's like, actually this
How
usually
much of
just
that do you
takes,
think is conviction, though?
I think a decent amount of it is.
Yeah.
I do also think that a lot of that's just in the water in our theology. As a nation, is just as evangelicals, we look at anything, not just like physical stuff, but almost any excellence that a Christian claims
Yeah.
as if it's unrighteous. Like if some NFL player goes, all glory to God, and like obviously there are levels to this, right?
Of
like
course.
there's a difference
We're
between
speaking in generalities.
a Kirk
Yeah.
Cousins and someone else.
Yeah.
Where you can tell if it's genuine or not. But like to just assume that guy doesn't mean it because he's a phenom is you revealing the fact that you feel insecure.
Yeah.
And
Probably, there's a lot of truth to that.
I think that's a lot of what it is. We like any level of excellence is kind of shot down as like don't go trying to raise the standard like that. Like all we need is the blood of Christ, and you're like, yes.
But what does that mean?
Is he owed more than this though? Like, is he owed more than the bare minimum? If you've been washed in that blood, is he owed more than you looking around at everyone else and going, all right, nobody try too hard? Like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say, well, like, taking some of this theological maximalism and pushing it into the other portions of our lives.
Right.
And I think this is one that we particularly need to do a lot of repentance over.
Have you met Steve Cruz yet?
No.
You need to meet him.
Okay.
You guys would get along really well. I'll introduce you guys.
Who's he with?
He does the Regular Man podcast. He's
Cool.
all the way down there.
Cool.
And we'll get you guys hooked up. And his podcast idea. You guys too should go check out Steve Cruz at the Regular Man podcast. It's Theology for regular men.
Cool.
And he wants
For
to
those that don't know, we're on the podcast here. We're in a media row, and this when
yeah.
Parker says down there,
Yeah.
it's the other end of the media row. We're on
Yeah.
one end, they're on the other.
Yeah, at Fight Laugh Feast down there, he wants to take back theology from the the high places, essentially, like
Yeah.
the theologians, and he wants to just practical theology for everyday guy.
Absolutely.
So you guys would,
Absolutely. Taking that stuff and then applying it to the everyday guy's life.
yeah.
Like to act like something like what your grandfather and father do doesn't require theology is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
Almost all of the parables in the New Testament are farming parables.
I have a sweatshirt at home, and on the sleeve it says everything is theological.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything. Your theology. This is one of my other favorites. Like Pastor Doug Wilson's here. This is his quote. And he talks about how your theology should come out of your fingertips.
Yep.
And I'm like, that means men ought to have strong hands.
Yep.
Like, why would you want to have really strong theology and then try to get it out of the weakest, most like effeminate hands? Like, no, don't do that. Like,
Right.
do it all the way.
Yeah.
Like, take it all the way out. Don't like section off portions of your life and go, well, it doesn't apply here.
Right.
It does.
Yeah. What is the saying where it's culture is downstream, or politics is downstream from culture? You could say everything is downstream of theology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
Schaefer did say something along those same lines.
Yeah.
Where he's like, politics is downstream from culture, but culture is downstream from the church.
Yeah, that's right.
And everything flows down from there. And I think that makes this an indictment on us to take back physical aesthetics, beauty, strength, power,
Health,
all of those things are things that ought to be Christian attributes.
Yeah.
I think Nate Spearing said something like this, speaking of an operator. Said something like, you ought to see a group of Christian men and immediately know those are guys that take their faith really seriously.
they're the real deal.
Yeah.
By the way that by the way they're built, by the way they carry themselves, by the way that they move through the world, you ought to be able to see it.
Did y'all see on Twitter this summer? There was like kind of like the leftist woman versus the rightist woman, and like who looked prettier. Did you see that kind of?
Oh,
debate?
yeah.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
That same kind of vibe.
Exactly.
Like of course they put up kind of
the extreme scenarios.
Extreme scenarios on the
Yeah.
left side versus right, and you're like, yeah, the right side's much better.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. So let's wrap this up one more time. Where can people find you? And where can people find you?
Tate Taylor on Instagram, BeRegenerated on Instagram, Brimstone Tactic on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube at at BeRegenerated, and then at the BeRegenerated podcast.
All right, Caleb.
I'm a nobody on
Oh
Twitter.
no, you're somebody. You're somebody.
My handle's Caleb Ephraim _. It's just my name. But I've been following these guys for a good while. I can definitely tell you it has been a benefit to my life.
You're the walking testimony. You're a somebody.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for sitting down with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
great.
Thanks for having us on.
That was awesome.